All right, hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of RevOps Demos That Don't Suck. My name is Matthew Baum, CEO and co-founder of RevOps Co-op. For those of you that don't know about RevOps Co-op, we have a community of 7,000 plus global revenue operations professionals who are all passionate about RevOps. And on this series of RevOps Demos That Don't Suck, we do RevOps demos so that y'all don't have to. And today I am very excited to be joined by Lily Youn, who is the head of growth at GradientWorks. For those of you that aren't familiar with GradientWorks, they provide dynamic book management software, which is a modern alternative to traditional territory design. Ultimately, with a tool like GradientWorks, you can increase sales productivity through dynamic, flexible books that improve rep performance and increase attainment. But we're going to be getting way past the value prop statement there. Lily's going to dive into kind of product, and I'm going to pepper her with some questions as well. But Lily, thank you for kind of being here. Thank you for giving us some time today to talk through things and give us a demo of the GradientWorks solution.
Yeah, excited to be here. Thank you for having me. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction.
Yeah, no problem. So let's, I guess, dive right into it. So first, I guess I always like starting with the problem statement. Like what are the problems that a tool like GradientWorks strives to solve for? I mean, we talked a little bit in the intro on call it territory management, territory design. I think that's a part of every company that exists out there. But what are some of those, problems that folks in RevOps might be facing when it comes to territory management, territory design, and how does GradientWorks specifically solve for some of those problems?
Yeah, that's a really good segue into my presentation that I have for you. So you can actually see as I talk about it. So
Yeah.
just a little background, especially with like the world of like territories, and historically territories have been around since like over 100 years ago. And sales organizations have built their territories either mostly like geographically based, or they've had a named account model. And the biggest challenge with either of those is that they're static lists being distributed to reps like maybe once a year or twice a year. And it's usually a really heavy lift to do, right? Which is why we don't want to do it as often. And so one of the things personally that I experienced in my previous roles, and also our co-founder and CEO Hayes was a head of RevOps at our previous company, and he felt a lot of the challenges of territory management and territory design. And I was actually leading the SDR department. And so I was always going to him about my reps territories and books, and making sure that they had what they need. And what came from all those pain points and challenges was there has to be a better way to actually allocate reps quota capacity against our TAM. So that way we're seeing an increase in rep productivity and outcomes. And so alongside with a more modern sales team nowadays, we still have field sales reps, but most of the tech organizations and companies, especially due to COVID, have gone to building an inside sales team to adjust to the times. And so the challenge has been like, out of everything out there, technologies are always changing, but territories haven't changed to adapt to the sales environment. And so that's where Dynamic Books comes into play. And so I'll go ahead and share my screen so you can see a little bit more of what I'm talking about. So as you can see with the modern day sales team, we're spending a lot of our resources on the important stuff, right? Like data enrichment, sales engagement platforms, enablement and training for our reps. And the territory management part is a huge aspect of your rep success. I like to compare it to as if like you have a building or your home and you have the foundation. Territory design is the foundation for your sales organization. And if the foundation isn't accurate, then it impacts everything else, like rep attainment, quota capacity, and then also the overall output for your revenue goals. And so, we see a lot of these resources going into updating these different sources for sales reps to be productive. And that's where we see a lot of the challenge from the RevOps side, right? They have so many different priorities going into play. Like if territory design is your foundation, then like data enrichment and enablement training and sales management, all of that is like what you put into your home, right? Like the pipeline and the faucet and the kitchen. What we've realized as after speaking with many RevOps and sales leaders alike is that the poor territories can really impact revenue outcomes and also rep satisfaction and tenure at an organization, which is typically not calculated in regards to how an organization's like CAC is in the end and how it impacts that either positively or negatively. And so that's where Gradient Works is really focused on is, hey, where is the opportunity for growth and in providing the support to our sales reps with a more modern territory design?
I like that. And so when it comes to, I guess, some of the problems that you mentioned, it sounds like a lot of it is around the fact that current ways to manage territories are essentially driven by people and spreadsheets. Is that is that fair in terms of what most people might be experiencing today?
Yeah, exactly. So spreadsheets, lots of back and forth between departments to make sure it's the right allocation. Some missed data, right? Like there's always that firsthand data that the sales managers know that your RevOps person like doesn't know right off the bat.
Yeah,
And like, oh yeah, that account we shouldn't be reaching out to. And you're like, well, why isn't it in Salesforce, right? And so it's really a big of a challenge of like manual work and the hours put into going back and forth and making sure your allocation of accounts is accurate to help support your reps hit their quota for the next year, especially as
yeah,
you're doing annual territory planning and annual planning in general.
yeah. And then so that makes a lot of sense on the, I guess, on the problem side as it relates to like operating expenses and where I'm spending my time. I also see you've got listed here reduction in revenue outcomes. And I guess I'm just curious in terms of, again, problems, right? As it sounds like folks, because of, is it poor territory design or management, are missing out on revenue opportunities. What are some of the things, I guess, that drive that reduction there that you can hit on?
Yeah, that's another great segue. A lot of the challenges with like the static territories, the once a year list being allocated to reps, or maybe even twice a year if you have that type of motion, whether it's through geographic or vertical or named distribution process of accounts, usually leads to a feast or famine challenge between your reps, usually based on tenure too. So sometimes your reps who have more accounts in their name will just hold on to them and not actually have the capacity to work all of them at any point in time. And so a lot of the challenges that I hear, and probably a lot of other RevOps leaders may have heard from their sales leaders, like, I found out that we just lost this deal to a competitor and we weren't even in the conversation for this buying cycle.
Mm-hmm.
How do we like make sure we're a part of that conversation next time? Or how do we even make this not happen? And it's really about making sure that you're allocating the right TAM to your based off your quotas, your reps quota capacity and what they can actually work in any given day, right? So for example, on average, we have SDR leaders that tell me that they expect their reps to be able to work anywhere from like 100 accounts a single day, like touching them, whether call, email, or social. And less for, of course, full cycle sales reps. But the fact that some reps are having over 1,000 accounts in their name, they can't actually realistically touch all those in a given day or a month. And so those
Yeah,
accounts that are just sitting in the reps' names could be doing something else, right? Either going through a marketing nurture campaign to help provide air coverage to your sales reps when they outbound, or some other rep who does have capacity could be working in instead. And that ties into a little bit about like the geographic side, right? Sometimes, I don't know if you personally experienced it or heard it, but like, California reps tend to have a better book
oh
than
yeah.
maybe in Indiana. Or maybe vice versa.
Yep,
You're the manufacturing business and the Midwest is booming, right?
yep.
And so in that sense, it's another aspect of like quota capacity. Like if a rep is already hitting their quota in California, what's going to motivate them to work the other like 500 accounts to the best of their ability when they're already there, right? Sure, you can have additional incentives to like help increase that, but like that rep in Indiana is like fighting tooth and nail to try to get every single deal they can and more and work every single account. So when we think of that, we're also thinking of like the headcount challenges alongside that. It's like every year, is this region needing more reps, or is this region needing some more support from other regions? By how do we recarve these accounts so that way we can support the quotas? Because quotas never really usually go down every year; it usually increases year over
Oh
year.
yeah.
It's all about finding the balance, and that also is a big challenge that we see a lot of RevOps people face, where they have to spend a lot of time calculating this, and it's based on the numbers that are given to them from their sales leaders of like what their next year's goals are, and not really taking into consideration quota capacity.
Makes a lot of sense. So I hear manual processes, manual time being spent, things happening once a year versus ongoing, and then I can totally see the revenue outcomes and the impact there, right? Depending on where things are allocated, who's got certain geographies, quota coverage, all that stuff. So how does at a high level, how does a tool like GradientWorks then solve for some of those things? And kind of give us the high level here based on the one or two slides that you have left, and then let's get into the actual product and kind of show us around there.
Yeah, typically we see these as like legacy territory designs. And so I've been talking to a lot of sales leaders and RevOps leaders about is a more dynamic allocation of accounts to your reps based off of your highest ICP fit and intent-based accounts. So that way they're prioritizing their time and outbounding and outreaching to the right potential prospects on an ongoing basis. So like just like your customer's journey is never exactly the same every single time, your reps book is constantly changing, just like those conversations with your prospects. And so the dynamic books model supports that change. And what that really looks like from a territory design is we, like I mentioned, take the intent-based accounts that you have and intent signals. So imagine like Zoom info, intent. And so taking those intent-based accounts, allocating the right number of those accounts to your reps equitably, so each of them have a equal shot of getting to their number, and also taking into fact like an inbound routing as well. So we see inbound lead routing and round robin a subset of your territory design. So it will follow based off of what your territory design is, which is actually an aspect of our platform that we have and support as well. That we take your inbound accounts, allocate that, and make sure that we understand the capacity of your rep. So you have a capping capability within the platform to say, hey, realistically, I only want my reps to hold 100 inbound leads at any point in time. And if they're capped out, it should go fill up some other reps books to 100, so they also have an equitable chance. And then also filling up the reps book for outbounding purposes. So right now, a lot of the conversations have been, how do I start a more of an outbound motion? How do I get my AEs to outbound more? And how do I produce more with my SDRs that I currently have to make up for maybe a potential dip in inbounds over the next year? And so when we're thinking about that, we also take your highest criteria of accounts and then also cap those to a smaller subset of accounts that they can really prioritize. So typically we see our clients choosing anywhere from like 50 accounts to 100 accounts in their rep's name at any point in time. And naturally, they'll start having conversations with their prospects. They'll outbound, they'll get yeses, meeting set, some no's. Maybe some people say, hey, I'm with a competitor of yours for another year. Rep data is so important to capture in your Salesforce. Because in most cases, reps will put it on their calendar, they'll put it on like some notepad. And then if they end up leaving the role for some reason, whether it's promotion or like in a different department, that data goes with them. But that's revenue generating data that can help your organization for the future. And so what the dynamic book model does is supports capturing that data in your Salesforce and then taking all the accounts that they get responses from and putting them into a pool username. And that way they can go into a nurture and a review process. And in that time period, the rep will get another account of equal or higher value to put them back at their cap of at least 100 outbound accounts at any point in time. And so on this side, the RevOps team can really shine by having this data, this firsthand data that reps are capturing and dispositioning accounts as maybe they're no longer in business, or you capture some competitive data. and you have better timing data for when you want to do like seasonal distributions of accounts that are tactical. And so this is where strategy can really come into play for RevOps leaders. And then for the ones that, are disqualified and they're definitely out of business, making sure that those are removed from the workable accounts list and never distributed to anybody else, which helps ramping new hires, right? To make sure that they're getting a good clean book of accounts to start them on the right track and ramp them up faster. So that way your customer acquisition cost isn't very long, right? And so when you go through the resting, you can actually auto enroll into marketing nurture campaigns, provide some air coverage there, get some people to inbound through that. And if not, they'll go through that, put them in a resting side, and then have them ready for a redistribution and outbounding again.
I mean, I love the focus on going from static to dynamic because, again, if you think about, call it any business, I mean, one, think about how much changes over the course of a calendar year, whether it's your own company, your own product, the strategies that you have, the team members that you have, right? So to think that assigning territories is something that should only be done once a year is kind of crazy because nothing else within your business stays static for a whole year. And there's more than just making the leap, I think, from static to dynamic as well, because there's so much, like, even once you get your territory set, that involves just the ongoing management of things, right? New people join, current people leave, businesses that you're targeting go out of business, new businesses get started, right? Like there's so much that changes on a regular basis, and to think that you're trying to manage that all through one person with some spreadsheets is kind of insanity. So actually with that, I guess maybe let's transition from some of the slides and actually show us around in the product. And I guess the first thing that I'd be curious on is, say, here, I'm sitting here, I'm a director of revenue operations. Let's say I haven't used territory management software before, but I've got a growing sales team, right? We're hiring, we're ramping. So lots of changes are kind of happening. Let's say I've got some spreadsheets in place today. I'm doing a bunch of things manually. What are some things that Gradient Works can solve for if that's my use case or scenario that I'm currently in?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, and I can show you as I walk through the product as well in that scenario specific use case. We actually get that a lot with our conversations with RevOps leaders who are like, yeah, like we're planning on hiring next year X amount of reps, and every single time I have to recarve these territories, I feel like I need to pull my hair out and, all that stuff. Differentiation is that we can do everything in Salesforce. The allocation of the ICP accounts, the number of accounts you want to assign to those new hires. And Gradient Works, the book builder product that supports the dynamic books model, is a managed package within Salesforce. When you're logged in, you'd be able to first start off with actually looking at the total addressable TAM you have in your Salesforce based off of the criteria that you want to build out. So this one is just looking at total new business accounts, and we have a total of 1,000 of those. And it gives you a really good breakdown of understanding like what is eligible right now in our Salesforce and what's currently owned by our reps. And
eligible meaning those are accounts that aren't owned by any one person, but are could be up for grabs.
Yeah. And so in the scenario, you have a bunch of new hires starting and you want to distribute them a book of accounts, but maybe you don't want to distribute them the full amount right off the bat because they are ramping and you're like, hey, I want to slowly get them up to the full amount of like 200 accounts in their name or 100 accounts. You can actually do that through the distributions tab. So, in our traditional day-to-day stuff, you do like everything is sell, and then you update all the records, and then you put them through like a data loader, or do a lot of back and forth in Excel sheets. Here, you would go into the distributions tab, click on new distributions, name the distribution that you want it to be. So maybe I would say new hire group. And then you can do the distribution type. So you can select a fixed amount to allocate to the reps, or we have something called target books, which I'll touch in a minute. But those are usually for existing ongoing reps that already have accounts in their name. So for a new hire scenario, I would say let's start them off with 50 accounts. I'll top them off again in another few weeks and to the 100 number. And you can choose these reps by name. So I'll choose Chloe Closer. And then this is the criteria option that you can choose of what you want to distribute to these reps. So if you have an account score for your accounts, we would be able to pull in any field on your account record to be able to create the logic of what you want your reps books to be comprised of. And so I could say, hey, let's give them anything greater than or equal to 7 out of a score of 10. And so we're giving them really good counts in this scenario. So they'll probably be really happy. And then you can also rank how you want these accounts and their names to be sorted, right? So let's say account score, higher the better. So if we have more like 10s, we can give them more 10 scored accounts versus like set more 7s. Or you can do the vice versa, right? And so we can do that filter. And then we can also make sure that we're stamping these accounts so we know when the account was distributed. And then we can go ahead and schedule this to actually run on a specific date and time, or schedule it so that's reoccurring. So that way I know every like Monday or like every Tuesday, I can distribute these batches of accounts. And so you can also preview the accounts that are to be distributed. And then once you actually select that list, you can also make sure that it is distributed to those reps. I've already distributed all my score 7 or higher accounts, so there's nothing showing in this preview. But if I were to just show this here, it'll just show me all the accounts in a preview.
Nice.
Yeah, so then you're able to see who the existing user is, who it's going to be assigned to, and then what segments and target books they're a part of, and then distribute those accounts to that rep.
That's great. And when it comes to, not to get too far ahead to like think about implementation or setup, but do you all offer support on, for example, if I have to, whether it's evaluating the current fields and kind of setup that I might have in Salesforce versus what's actually needed to make sure that I'm getting the most out of your product or solution? Do you all help on the front end with, call it that evaluation or the setup, the deployment, the implementation too?
Yeah, definitely. Our team will actually be we're more of a partner to our clients, right? We believe our client success is our success. So if there's anything where people have questions on like, hey, what type of field do I need? Like we would be a part of that conversation. Even on the strategic side, we have a lot of conversations with our clients around, hey, we're thinking about building this team next year. Like how should we go about thinking about comprising their books based off of like what's existing in our TAM?
That's great.
Yeah, and so this is like the one-off scenario of like for ramping new hires, like being able to allocate those accounts to them quickly and accurately with the accounts that they should start focusing on, and then helping them prioritize on those accounts by knowing when these were distributed and when they should be working.
So I guess we looked at, or we've got the distributions on here. I'm curious on the retrievals as well, in terms of, like I saw the logic of, okay, we're going to set up accounts to get distributed out to, say new folks, right? I guess show us or talk about the retrievals, right? Like, can we set up the same logic to pull accounts out of people's names, and what's the sort of criteria, right? Can I set it up so that it's like, all right, if you get an account and it's not worked, there's no activity attached to that account within X number of days, it gets pulled back. Am I able to set up some of those retrieval type of rules as well?
Yeah, exactly. It's like you saw a demo of this already.
I'm just thinking of all the things that I used to do manually.
You're like, I wish I had this. Yeah. And so to your point, like we do have a retrievals part, and it does exactly what you mentioned, right? You're wanting to make sure these accounts that you distribute get worked by someone. And if they're not, the rep should not be holding on to it, right? Either it should be in marketing's hands to nurture, or another AE who has the capacity to work it. Just before we get into the actual retrieval, so you can see how it actually works with the target books and the capacity aspect. So for your existing reps, right, you can create as many target books for the segments that you have. So I have an example of a corporate team and an enterprise team, and this is where you can create the criteria for each of these segments for the reps. And so, for example, for my corporate team, let's say I want to cap them at 100 accounts that they can actively own and work. And 50 of those are our highest ICP fit accounts and meet the criteria of what they should be working. So, number of employees is less than 500, buying stage is true or is not filled out, and then it's some type of awareness stage. And then you can also put in like another filter of, well, actually, the other 50 to be intent based from whatever intent source that we have. And these are the stages. And then that comprises what the reps will be able to own and get distributed. And so I currently have in this view, based off of that criteria, 707 accounts that meet the corporate account book requirement. 166 of those are owned and 541 are eligible. And 2 reps are currently in this book. And you can see that their capacity that is at 83%. And so, and it's segmented by the core book and the intent book. And so if you're looking at Chloe Closer, she's pretty much at her mark of 100 accounts, right? She has 99 distributed to her that from the target account book, and then 1 off book account, which actually provides the RevOps team visibility of like, what is this person working that potentially they shouldn't be working, that's not in their segment. Or maybe they're self-prospecting and they're like prospecting to a new industry and they're onto something. Being able to track those assignments of the accounts and what's being worked. And then you can see Daniel Dialer, he's at 67 accounts in his name right now. And maybe he needs to be topped off. So in that scenario, you'd be able to use a distribution to get him back to the 100 number. And then going into the retrievals portion, this is where I would say like on a weekly basis, a lot of our RevOps leaders will either do it on a weekly or monthly, where they'll do exactly what you mentioned and say, I want to pull back any accounts that haven't been touched in maybe 30 or 60 days, and then redistribute them or put them into a nurture cadence. And so similar to the distribution process, right? You have who you want to actually retrieve these accounts from and where you want to put it into. So we have that pool. Ours is called user. So it's like a pool where accounts can go to, and then you can retrieve accounts by specific reps or by your target book. So let's say I want to do it for the entire corporate segment of reps in there. And then I can choose how many accounts I want to actually retrieve first, or just leave it blank. And then I can just look at all the accounts and the reps names that match that criteria and retrieve those. And so I think you said like last 30 days, no activity.
Yeah.
So this is where I can do last activity date less than last 30 days. Hit save. And then you can also do the ranking criteria here. So you can say like by account score, if I want it to be the highest accounts first that come back. And then you can also make sure to stamp these and know when it was returned back to the pool.
Yep. Yeah, or if I wanted to leave them with the high value accounts, I could just select to pull back the low value ones first.
Exactly, that too. And so I can retrieve these accounts. It'll show you that 123 will be retrieved from the target book account rep. And when we go back into the target books under the corporate segment, you should be able to see the update right here that Daniel Dialer had 60 something accounts, but he actually wasn't working a good majority of that book.
Yeah. And then will the reps get notified when like retrievals like that happen, or when new accounts, I guess, get added to their name?
Yep. So we can do notifications to reps of the allocation happening and the retrieval happening. We also have a way for sales leaders to like make sure that reps are actively working their accounts too. So we have this reps reporting capability. So If I go into Chloe Closer, it'll show me how many accounts has Chloe actually worked, how many activities have been completed per account, and the actual number of accounts in target book and off book that are being worked right now. Chloe's got some work to do. And so you'll be able to see what accounts are worked, what haven't been worked yet. And it's really helpful just visibility wise for both from a RevOps leader and a sales leader perspective to communicate and say like, hey, this rep isn't working their account books, take a look at it. Let's go decide like what's the cadence we should be actually holding our reps to make them more accountable for working these accounts. Typically, we see some clients doing like a weekly cadence. Like, for example, we have a client that started this process called SDR Nation. And what they do is every Monday, they set the expectation with their SDRs of like, every Monday, you're going to get 50 net new accounts to work for their week. And at the end of every day Friday, we're going to pull back any accounts that haven't been touched in the last 60 days. And so they already have that motion in place. And automations on the templates allows a RevOps leader to not have to spend a lot of time on making sure that they're keeping up with that because it's an automated process at that point.
Yeah, that's great. Process enforcement is such a big deal for anyone in RevOps. All right, great. So we've got a few minutes left. So I guess curious on, obviously we've got a Salesforce integration. What are some of the other, I guess, common integrations or most popular integrations that y'all have?
So we have integrations with Slack for notifications, direct, private channel notifications as well for more visibility. And then we also have direct integrations with SalesLoft and Outreach. So being able to auto enroll contacts into accounts, which can help reps save time on the admin work. And then we also have integrations with GCal and Microsoft Office for a calendaring capability. I think I mentioned it earlier, but we do have like a support option for lead routing and round robin capabilities as a part of our dynamic book management solution. That is where the calendar integration comes in, where you're able to book meetings from as an SDR to an AE round robin.
Yep. And who are some of, I guess I'm curious on like, who are some of your current customers today and who might be, I guess, like a great fit on the customer side or prospective customer side, right? If I'm sitting here kind of evaluating territory management, territory design software, how do I know beyond obviously watching this and getting a feel for the product that I might be a good fit for y'all?
Well, first of all, you can always talk to me. But the other one is like, for example, our clients are like, so Omnipresent is a client of ours, QuotaPath is a client of ours. We have several others that are pretty large, like public organizations. I like to make sure that they get a shout out, even though I can't reference them. It's a wide range. Typically our ICP, I'd say, is anywhere from like 30 sellers and higher. And so usually the biggest point in where we know that the client will benefit from adopting a dynamic book management solution is when they're noticing, one, their reps aren't really attaining their numbers, majority of their reps, and they're needing to focus on building more pipeline via outbounding. So it really can apply to any sales organization, and even bits and parts of these, can be implemented for even smaller sales organizations. I'd say from the lead routing side, it comes even earlier for, companies that are even smaller than 25 sellers.
And then I always like to ask this question too of who's not a fit. So it sounds like on the CRM integration, Salesforce is kind of the current integration. So I'm assuming if I'm on HubSpot that you're not able to help me at least today based on the product that you have. But so I guess one, is that the case? And then two, like who may not be a fit for something like this?
Yeah, currently our integration we're native to Salesforce. And so, it breaks my heart every time someone who uses HubSpot comes in and they're like, we really want y'all. Sorry, I'll let you know when things change. I'd say the other side of it is, we see a lot of need with, we see a lot of success with SaaS companies, companies that are looking to build and grow their inside sales motion as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for the organizations that are fully focused on just sticking to like geographic territories and not doing like a dynamic motion and just are okay with static motions, those those probably aren't going to be a really great fit.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to buy into the problems that we talked about at the very beginning and kind of see the value in those. So makes sense. And I guess one of my last questions is on like just the implementation and kind of the upfront setup. Talked about it a little bit. You mentioned how you all do provide support, kind of some consultation, but I'm curious, is implementation something that is included in price or the investment of the software package? Do you charge separately for that? And then how long does the current typical implementation take in terms of, and it could be a time range, but if I wanted to buy, Gradient Works today, how long would it take me to, have something ready to say deploy within my org?
Yeah, great question. So for implementation, we don't have like a separate fee for implementation. It's just we want to make sure you're set up and the right way and can hit the ground running. And so we do have a premium services option. So if you want really like hands-on work done and a lot of like consultation done on our end and build out on our end, like custom stuff, if you want, we do have that option. And then in regards to ramp time, like onboarding time, it really varies. I think it just depends, right? Organizationally, how your RevOps team and your company has things structured, whether you do things in sprints with your engineering, like your engineering team or your IT team. Some clients get onboarded within 2 days after signing. They're like, this is my use case. And we're like, all right, let's do it. We need to go live before this conference. We got it. And then, sometimes it takes about a month or so.
Yep. Okay. That's great. I guess last question would be like, one, how can folks get in touch with you all if they either want to chat territories or hear more, learn more about the product? And then two, anything else in closing that you want to make sure you mention about company, solution, products before we kind of wrap things up?
Just as like a side of like additional information, like we are happy to offer like free territory consultations for the RevOps co-ops members, and typically they can be anywhere from like 30 to 45 minutes long, and it could be anything, like especially with it being annual territory planning and talking about fiscal year 23 and who knows what that's going to look like in the middle of next year. So happy to have conversations where I'm very passionate about it, especially because I was the one, for some reason, managing the territories for our SCR and AEs when I was an SCR director, and also my CEOs as well. So I'm happy to just chat about it. And if we can help with the dynamic book management, happy to discuss how that would work at your organization. That being said, there are some aspects of the dynamic book management, even if you're maybe not at exactly the stage where you can implement the full process and automate it, there are some aspects of it that you can actually apply even today. And so I think that's the biggest takeaway is like, how do we help our reps now by gathering and building the processes today to do that?
Yeah.
Ways to reach me if you're interested in learning more. My email address is lily@gradientworks. And if you'd like to look at some more information about us, our website is www.gradient.works, not gradient.works.com. People tend to put a .com after it. On my email especially, just as a heads up. But there's a lot of great content on the website as well around like annual territory toolkit, annual ROE toolkits as well. So those are all free. So feel free to take a look.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for that, Lily. So everybody watching, hit them up. I can speak for experience, at least my prior experience, as you could probably tell, that back in the day when I was in RevOps and doing a bunch of this stuff manually via spreadsheets and fielding, it's like every single week about accounts not getting allocated the right way or accounts being in other people's names or so-and-so is working my accounts. Not having to experience any of that, automating that and enforcing the process would have been very valuable. Unfortunately, I don't have a time machine. I can't go back in time and save effort, but hopefully you can. So I hope you all enjoyed this demo. Lily, thank you very much for walking us through this. But with that, I will let you all run. So thank you very much and have a good rest of your day. See y'all.
Thank you.